different clinics will have different flows in their clinic, but the process of breaking down your workflow is going to be exactly the same, no matter what you're doing it for. And so it's quite literally the first thing that you're going to want to do is Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Healthcare Entrepreneur Academy podcast. I'm your host, Jason Duprat, and we are back here for another Tactical Tuesday episode. On this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of systems and processes. So this is a topic that sounds really boring, I'm not going to lie, but it is absolutely incredibly fascinating once you start to learn exactly what this means and you start to realize how powerful it is to have good systems and processes in your business and how you can use automations, how you can use artificial intelligence to help you streamline all of the work that needs to get done. So the sort of concept of processes and systems is a little bit sort of esoteric because people don't really fully understand exactly what that entails. It just sounds like very corporate, right? But if you start to dig down deep into what it is, it's just the workflow. It's just a fancy way of saying the workflow for a particular job, for a particular task, for whatever it is you're trying to accomplish in your business. So there's all sorts of workflows that happen in a medical practice, all sorts of workflows that happen in an online business. Basically, no matter what you're doing in any job, much of what you're doing is incredibly repetitive. And maybe not you personally, but much of what is getting done is incredibly repetitive. So let's take, for example, this podcast. This podcast involves probably hundreds of individual steps to produce and publish each episode. And hundreds of tasks really add up and get incredibly time consuming. So I'm in this mastermind group led by Onyx Singal, and it's mostly online entrepreneurs and marketers. But there's a guy there and his name is Richard Winters, and he started a new business. He's started many businesses. He's really just an amazing entrepreneur, incredibly intelligent. Him and his family live and work out of their RV, and they've traveled to every single most amazing spot in the US, been to every state, have lived in their RV for 3 years, and just living the traveling, sort of family experience dream while simultaneously making many, many, many six figures in income. And so he actually gave a lesson to our mastermind group. And one of the things that he's doing in his new business is podcast production, podcast management, end-to-end full service management as a podcast agency. And so he gave a lesson on how he's leveraging basically his expertise in systems and in processes and workflows and using a variety of software tools to help make those workflows incredibly efficient. And so I'm going to go through like a little bit of an example here, and I'll talk about the podcast because that's literally what I'm doing every day. And it's an example that he had shown. And it's a really good example because it's simple, it's easy to understand. And different clinics will have different flows in their clinic, but the process of breaking down your workflow is going to be exactly the same, no matter what you're doing it for. And so it's quite literally the first thing that you're going to want to do is document every single step that you take or somebody on your team is taking to accomplish a particular task, job function. And so, for example, for this podcast, I'm just going to skip to the recording part of it and basically the uploading and just a part of our distribution, just to keep it simple. I don't want to get way in the weeds because there's a lot more that actually happens prior to, actually doing this part of it in terms of, research and preparation and all that stuff. But let's just start to make this example simple, let's just start from the time that I enter the studio and push record. Now, there's obviously even steps before I push record, right? There are things like turning on all the lighting. There's things like launching all the software that I need. All of that can actually be automated too, but I'm not even going to get in the weeds there because let's just keep it simple. So from the time I push record, right, on my podcast recording mixer, I use the Rodecaster Pro, and just an awesome device for podcasting. So I come in here, right, and I get my cameras turned on, I push record, and I start talking to the camera. And that's the initial process that I take. So moving down, what I'm doing is I'm recording, obviously, the content here for whatever, 10 to 20 minutes, or if it's an episode, it's a lot longer if it's an interview episode. Then when I'm finished, I have a video file and I have an audio file, right? So now I've got to take those two files and I need to get one of them off of my mixer, which is basically, it's got a card inserted in the back. So I have to take that card out, put it into a micro SD card reader, transfer that file into the podcast folder. So that means I got to open up my files, locate the podcast folder, locate the folder for raw audio files that have not been edited, drop that file there. Then I have a video recording that's coming out of my ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. And so I have that recording to an external solid state hard drive. I have to unplug the hard drive there, plug it into my computer, and transfer the video file into that podcast's episode's raw video folder. So that way I have a copy on my hard drive, which actually is a network storage device. But I've got a hard copy here physically at my location. Then I have to take those files and upload them to a Google Drive. We have a virtual team. So they have to go and grab the files from the Google Drive after I upload them. So uploading them takes, some of these video files are massive because they're like super high res, uncompressed. It can take a couple of hours to upload 2 camera angles, especially if I have a guest and it's a 45-minute episode. It can take 2 to 3 hours to upload that. I've got only 50 megabytes per second upload. And so that process takes a while. I get those files in the proper folder and I tell in our messaging system that we use for our team, we use a software called Slack. I tag Al, who's our podcast editor, in Slack and say, Al, hey, podcast episodes are up and ready to edit it, or they're up loading. They'll be ready to edit in a couple hours. So he'll grab those files. He'll navigate to the Google Drive folder where I've uploaded the raw video and raw audio. He'll grab those and then start to do his edit. Now he has his own workflow, which is probably hundreds of more steps, but we'll skip that part. And then what he'll do is take those finished files and he will upload them to a Google Drive where the finished edited files are. That creates basically another process in which our podcast manager then needs to go and grab the edited file. So Al will tag MJ, who's our podcast manager. MJ will run into the Google Drive folder, grab the file, the audio file, log into our Libsyn podcast hosting platform, upload the audio file, and then Al will have already drafted while he's editing. Since he's listening to the whole video while he's editing it, he's also jotting down show notes using a template we've given him. So she'll grab those show notes, she'll review them. She'll also review all or part of the podcast episode to come up with a compelling title. And then she puts all that in Libsyn. From there, she has to take the show notes. We'll click the publish button on Libsyn. That will send it out to the podcast platforms. But then we also have it on our website. So then somebody has to grab those show notes and put them on the website. Luckily, we've sort of automated that part. But that's just a simple example of a bunch of steps, right, that need to happen for me to get my part of the podcast done, simplified, basically. So that's my workflow, right? So this is my process for getting my particular part of this podcast production done. So how could I possibly streamline this workflow, this process, even more? How could I add some systems to it to make sure that it goes off even easier with less digging around in folders, with less button clicks? Because those button clicks and uploads and all that stuff, it takes time. And when you're doing it, how many episodes are we doing a year now? I don't even know. Say we're doing 100 episodes roughly a year. That's a lot of time, right? That's a lot of clicks. And there's other parts of your business where you might be having a workflow that is done thousands of times a year or tens of thousands of times a year. And so those are even more critical to have a really streamlined process for doing that. So here's how we are working through breaking down our podcast process to make it even easier. And so some of the pain points that we have related to the podcast are going and navigating to those file folders and trying to find those folders, the communication where we have to manually drop a Slack message to somebody to let them know that it's ready. We have like a tracker sheet. So once the podcast episode's done, somebody has to manually go to our podcast tracking sheet and enter the episode number, the episode title, if there's a guest, the guest name, and all the information related to that particular podcast, all done manually. So, that's probably 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even more, 30 minutes of work. So in order to streamline all of those little steps, this is kind of what we've done. So now, rather than recording directly on my Rodecaster Pro, I use a software that's online. The software that's online can be linked to like Dropbox or Google. So the second I hit stop record, the file automatically goes to Google Drive. So right there, it just saves me the upload time of 2 different files, because this will upload the audio and the video simultaneously, move it automatically into Google Drive. We have a tool called Zapier. Zapier makes you happier. So this is a really cool software. This is relevant to you, even if you don't have an online business, because these tools can be used anywhere you use software in your business. And there's a lot of places where you should be using software in your business to make things smoother. So before you jump off, reconsider staying. So we use Zapier. Zapier will actually monitor the podcast folder, right? It knows when a new file is added. So Zapier is monitoring that folder. When it senses that riverside.fm, our software, just transferred a file over to that particular folder, it will then automatically create notifications and tasks for our podcast team. We've already saved many minutes of upload, download time just on a single occurrence of like one podcast production. Well, now we use another software, project management software called Asana. So now that Zapier detected it, it told Asana to create a task for Al to start editing this particular episode. And it already has the direct link to that Google Drive where that file that he needs is residing. So he doesn't have to go and log into our Google Drive and try and shuffle around in the folders to get there. Saves probably, who knows, 10 clicks and another couple minutes. So this Asana task has everything broken down that Al needs to do on his end, task by task. All of his tasks are in there, broken down step by step. He's creating, not only editing the video and audio, he's making clips for, YouTube shorts and for TikTok and all that sort of thing. So he's got multiple steps in there already broken down, instructing him on exactly what he needs to do. Well, then once he's done with his files, he's uploading them back to another folder in Google Drive for completed folders. We have Zapier monitoring that particular folder. And again, once it detects finished files that Al just put there that are fully edited, it will automatically create a new task in our project management software for MJ, where MJ now gets a notification that says, MJ, Al just uploaded files for the podcast. Here's the files. Here's everything that you need to do. Here's the show notes that he already drafted. And then her Asana task has all the parts that she has to do broken down, where it's got a link right there to Libsyn. She doesn't have to type in, the Libsyn podcast hosting thing in her browser anymore, the URL. It's just there in the task. She just clicks the task. We use a password management tool that automatically fills the password that we can share with our team, where they can't see the password, but it allows them to access our accounts automatically. Right there, we've saved many more clicks and many more minutes. Now she uploads the audio file to Libsyn, enters a few things manually, copy paste the show notes, copy paste the title she came up with, and then clicks submit. That automatically goes out to all the podcasting sites. Next level stuff here, we've got a WordPress website, right? So now Libsyn and WordPress can talk together. We installed a plugin on our WordPress website that's monitoring the podcast RSS feed. So it will automatically pull the new episode into our website along with the show notes, all formatted beautifully. So no human has to even bother logging into our website to grab the podcast. So we've saved many more clicks and many more minutes right there. So that's hopefully a solid sort of understanding on how we are using software. And we're using AI too. I mentioned AI at the beginning, but the AI side that's pretty much on Al's and on the video editing. So there is some incredibly amazing software now that will automatically transcribe our podcast while he's editing. So while he's editing, he's actually not even editing the video, he's editing the text. So if there's an example, something where I mess up and have to start over, he can just highlight the text, delete it, and it actually edits the video simultaneously. And also there's a bunch of other cool features in the editing software that incorporate AI that speeds up the editing process. He's only done this one time so far. So it's like a brand new process that we're working on. He's said that already it's probably saving him, just the editing alone, 25% off of his editing time.